Okay, we're in the tabernacle. We brought you through the door. Once you get in the door, there's the brazen altar. That's the place where the sacrifice is. Then you're going into the fellowship place. There's the laver you wash off because sacrifice is a mess. And you got dirty and you walk there. And then you go inside and you have the lampstand, and then you have the altar of incense, the table of showbread. These three things are in the holy place. And then now there's the Holy of Holies that we're talking about next. And this is the centerpiece of everything. So we're between, let me go through this first. Let me get up. I'll come back to this in a second. There you can see the aerial view of how things look. Here's the entrance. You come through the sacrifice. There's the washing place. In here is this holy place. The priests, Levites minister in here. But this place is the holiest of holies. And this is only the high priest goes in here once a year, not without blood. And between this is this veil, a thick veil woven. And it's, so we'll go back here to this place, the veil. The veil, the separation between the presence of God and this and the people. Okay. Now what we have God progressing toward is a restoration of the kind of intimacy that he had with Adam and Eve before the fall. So like before the fall, God met Adam and Eve in the cool of the day. They fell. They heard the voice of God walking in the garden, "Where are you?" And so this was not an unusual thing. They knew he was coming. They hid themselves away. The intimacy was gone because of the violation of the commandment to eat of the tree of knowledge and good and evil. This is the question, why? Why should we not eat? The questioning, God told you not to. That was the answer to the question. But the pursuance of their curiosity, Eve's curiosity, and then Adam's jumping into that curiosity also. We know that 6:19-20 in Hebrews and 10:20 it talks about Jesus went through the veil into the heavenly tabernacle and brought his own blood there. So the figures that are in the tabernacle that Moses was given the pattern for are figures of something real in heaven, apparently. So the pattern given, is there some sort of heavenly tent up there? Apparently so. Whether it's more elaborate or something, it's probably more, we don't know. But Jesus entered in with his own blood once for all. And this is a picture of the veil being torn there. So I want to show you something next here. We see this, the tabernacle was stitched with cherubim on it. Okay? And this is important, 2 cherubim. Now we go back to Genesis. What was guarding the way to the tree of life after the fall? Cherubim. With a what? Flaming sword. A flaming sword. Okay? So this is the picture here. The veil here is a very visible demonstration of the separation that had come between the presence of God and man because of the violation of the holiness. And the tree of life in the Garden of Eden was probably, in my mind, the place of fellowship where God would meet with Adam and Eve. I can't be convinced, but this is my own conviction about this. Because before that, it was this is the tree of life. This is where we come and talk. It doesn't say anything about eating from that tree. It just talks about the tree of life. It doesn't talk about, in Revelation it talks about tree of life and stuff like that, have fellowship. But I think this is the place where God had the fellowship. Once they violated this, once they mistrusted God, God said not to eat of that tree. In that day you eat thereof, you will surely die, and that knowledge of good and evil, you'll have you open yourself up to something you have no capacity for because you're limited, you're clay, you're created. But you have major capacity because I made you. And so the presence of God, that was guarded, and they could not come into that presence. There's a lot of theories on that. But if Adam and Eve had tried to venture into that place again, who knows what would have happened now that they were sinful, now that they had violated the commandment. So the tree of life is, God is after a restoration of the intimacy that was lost in the fall, the presence. He cannot abide, they can't abide His presence because, God is holy and you must be holy. Yes, Gary? It doesn't say anything what happened to that tree. It doesn't have anything. It just says it was guarded by a flaming sword. So, yes?
I don't think it was a tree at all.
Okay. What do you think it was? May not have been a tree.
I don't think it was a tree.
You don't think it was a tree? All right. Well, I don't know. Like I said, I have this picture in my mind that it's like this. And, we have no idea. We won't know it until we get to eternity and God shows us. But here's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, fruit, and I'm thinking and now there's this way to this tree of life. You can't go there anymore. You can't go there anymore after the sinfulness. And then we go back to this point. When Jesus Christ's offering is made, the curtain is split and you're welcome into the presence of God. Now we have boldness to enter because of what Jesus did. So from the fall to the cross, from this tree, it was very easy. Obey me about the tree, and you'll live. But they didn't obey Him, so they entered into death. Jesus Christ is called the second Adam, or the last Adam. He was instructed to obey God about the tree and die, so that all might live. And so between the two spaces, we have a couple thousand years. Maybe 4, maybe 5,000, I don't know. Thousands of years in between the fall and then the redemption, the completion of the redemption process. And now this is open. The blood of Jesus makes it possible for us to be in the presence of God, or for us to be now the tabernacle of the Holy Spirit. We are now have the capacity for the presence of God. We now have, because the justice that God decreed, and that Satan is very careful to remind God of again and again as it relates to people. Satan is the accuser of the brethren. He's always telling God that I'm accusing them, and God is always pointing out to him that the blood covers them. This is like it happens day and night, God will be happy to have that end, I think, at some point. There's a point in Revelation where it says there's silence in the space of heavens for 30 minutes. I think that's where God just tells we're all taken up already. And I think that's where God just says the accuser to shut up for 30 minutes. Again, that's my own idea. But in the same thing with the tree of life, I'm thinking, ancient cultures, they found ancient cultures where people have gone into, missionaries have gone into, tribal areas, and they found that this center of some of these ancient villages, primitive-looking villages, is a tree. You come to this tree, and this is where we decide everything. And so it's very easy for me to say that Adam and Eve fellowshipped under one of the trees with the voice that walked in the garden. After they fell, now that's not possible anymore. Now don't sit there and say that's like the church doctrine on the tree of life. Pastor Andrelonis just declared, this is my own imagination working, and I've got a very overactive imagination. So let's not, but I'm just thinking, when you think about it, when you put all the pieces together, the sin happens, and there's cherubim that guard the way to the tree of life. When they build the first tabernacle, they put cherubim there on the outside of the veil to say, no entrance. It's like, no entrance. You can't come in here. You can't come in here yet. The presence of God is beyond that veil. There's no light in there. There's no light in there. There's only the mercy seat. We'll get there. Okay. The mercy seat. Mercy seat. I'm going to show you. This is Christ. Christ will shed his blood. He is the expiation for our sin. That means he presents his blood. Expiation means he presents his blood to the Father, to God, to satisfy the justice that he decreed. Now the mercy seat looks like this. It's not a very large thing, but now these cherubim, look what they're looking at. The cherubim on the outside are saying no entrance, but the cherubim here have now had their faces turned to something else. They are turned to where the blood will be, where is it? Oops, sorry. There it is. The blood will be spilled on this part of the mercy seat. And Satan was an anointed cherub, and the cherubim that still serve God and guarding the presence of God and the holiness of God, now their faces are turned towards the blood. On the outside it says no entrance. On the inside here, the blood. And then when the high priest went into this place, according to the pattern that God will give Moses, the high priest, Aaron and then his descendants, the one chief priest, would take blood through that veil once a year and sprinkle it on there for the sins of the nation. And when Jesus Christ went into heaven with his own blood on that mercy seat, now the cherubim of heaven, the cherubim that guard his presence, now look at the blood, and the presence is fine. The blood, there's no longer. So now they're not saying stay out. Now they're not swinging swords of fire. Now they are looking at the blood and saying that sinners are welcome in the presence of God. If they receive the sacrifice, if they recognize that, now they can come in. We can come boldly before the throne of grace to come. Hebrews encourages us, let us come boldly before the throne of grace to find help in time of need. So the cherubim guarded the way to the tree of life after the fall, and the cherubim are put on this outside of the veil to say no entrance. But then when Jesus dies, the veil is split, and now the cherubim look at the blood, and the blood avails. The blood is the thing that avails, it covers. So now this principle, okay, so we see the tabernacle, back to the tabernacle arrangement. Now we have this priesthood. That's just kind of interesting. The garments on there. The garments of the priesthood, they were for beauty. And this is another principle that we're going to see that comes to pass, the beauty. The priesthood. Who is the beauty of the priesthood? The priests had things on their shoulders that had the names of the tribes of Israel on it, and they had things on their heart with the names of the tribes of Israel on it. So the priest was designed to carry the memory and to represent God, to carry the people on their shoulder and in their heart, to work for them and to love them. This was what God ordained the priesthood for. And this is what Jesus Christ did. He shouldered the cross, and his heart all of us were carried in his heart. So the priesthood, all of these garments are specifically designed for beauty. It says that specifically in Exodus, for beauty. I'm going to get to that point. Beauty is an important thing. Like we say that, beautiful. It's like it's a big statement for us. Beautiful and thank you and beautiful. Why would, it takes some things that are so beautiful, they take our breath away. And it's a big concept. It's a big concept that's hard for people to explain. Like, where did the idea in the evolutionary design, when did the appreciation from beauty become a chemical construct in our person? Ask that one to someone trying to explain that to you. Go to a college class, okay? Where does the conception of beauty, tell me the chemical, because sometimes I look at a rose and it's fine. I really want a thing, and other times I just walk right by it. I don't really care. But if there's a chemical process going on, shouldn't I appreciate the rose every single time? Like Pavlov's dog, if you ring the bell, the dog slobbers, it expects food. It's like if I am just a higher form of animal, every time I see beauty, the chemical reaction should be the same. So there's this idea, how does God demonstrate his authority on the earth? Beauty is one of those things. beauty is that. Beauty is something. So the priesthood was given these garments made of linen, so there wasn't any sweat. Primarily, they weren't supposed to sweat in their labors of working for God. And then the beauty. No sweat and beauty. All right. So priesthood. Okay, I'm sorry. This is a little long kind of PowerPoint. Sorry. But, the information's there. And it's always... the priesthood, what is it? God is determining that there needs to be a representation there. And it was sort of a prefigure or just a early demonstration of what Christ would be eternally. So these guys, Aaron's people, Aaron and his family, and the Levites were serving. They entered the earthly tabernacle. They entered the holy place once a year. The high priest entered beyond the veil with the blood. They made the offering for their own sins first, and then they made offerings for the sins of the people, the blood of bulls for the sins of the people. So this process of receiving the offerings and bringing the blood before God, this was the priesthood's this was the priesthood's design. God designed the priesthood for this purpose. So again, like I'm saying, okay, again, we're coming to this place again, and we see it again. Okay, Adam and Eve, groups of people, lots of wickedness. Noah, another group, a collection of people, lots of people. Abraham, God selects a nation in the midst of many nations on the world, in the midst of dominated by one of the world's great civilizations. God chooses this nation, pulls it out. After that nation gets settled in the wilderness, God looks at a tribe and says, I'm going to take this one, and they are going to be my servants in the tabernacle. It wasn't anything about, like if you read the history of Levi or anything like that, yes, they were from Moses. Moses and Aaron were of the tribe of Levi, but we know that Moses did murder somebody when he was in Egypt, and he lived in Egypt very comfortably to a certain point. He tried to do things on his own, but God just picked Moses like he picked Noah, like he picked or elected Abraham. And so the whole thing is that God is saying, this is my business. I don't really pick people on the basis of any talent that's invested in them. I'm just choosing this, and you are going to have to, I chose this tree in the garden, don't eat from it. I chose this people to serve in my tabernacle, let them. They are my representatives. I've chosen them. It's like, you're not of that family. You do your stuff. Dan and Judah's going to be the tribe that Jesus comes from. That's going to happen. And they're not even connected. So the priests, that's one of the things that's going on in the tabernacle and in the temple of Jerusalem is like, Jesus, who are you? You don't even like Jesus, you notice, never goes in beyond the outer court of the temple. He doesn't go in there. He knows that he's not of that tribe. His priesthood is of a different kind. His priesthood is of the priesthood of Melchizedek, which is from a different kind of priesthood. It's a different kind of priesthood, and it's a priesthood that, again, Melchizedek was not even from Abraham's people. Abraham offered sacrifice to Melchizedek, who was not of his family. So God was at work in the world all throughout human history. And here's this priest who represents him. Moses goes out, and Jethro was a priest of Midian, and Moses, while he's marrying this daughter of Jethro, and while he's on the backside of the desert, he's called to meet God in the burning bush while he's in this family. So this idea of priesthood is bigger than this. But as far as this nation goes, I'm going to give you this group of people to represent you before me. Just accept it. It's like sometimes that's all we can say is like we say why. It's the big question, and God just says, because I said so. I really don't have any other reason. I mean, they're not, Aaron made a golden calf, but his family still gets to serve in the real tabernacle. And you're like, why wasn't Aaron disqualified from that? And it's because it's a gift of grace. It's God's election and choosing this group of people. to serve in his tabernacle. Okay? Make sense? All right. Get the point. Okay, Jesus Christ in his priesthood is different. If you go into the book of Hebrews, you have the answer for these things. Heavenly temple. He entered once for all. The veil was rent, so now we can all go in. He offered himself for our sins. He offered his own blood once and for all. So this is the difference between again and again and again and again and again and all through the ages, the priests of the Jews are offering these sacrifices. It's still happening. It's still happening. They still have a day of atonement every year, Yom Kippur. It comes up right about now, right? Tomorrow. Yom Kippur is tomorrow. Okay. It's the Day of Atonement. Yom Kippur. And we're going to find out what that means in a second. Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement. It's the day when the high priest was supposed to bring the blood into the tabernacle and put it on the mercy seat once. Did it once a year. That's the only time he's allowed in there. And there's no light in there except the glory of God, the presence of God. God dwelled between the cherubim. And the glory of God is there above that. So you come through this, you have the golden lampstand with the light. But once you go beyond the veil, the only light in there is the presence of God. And all you can do is bring the blood and put the blood on the mercy seat once a year. So again and again and again, the priests had to offer this. But when Jesus came, Jesus went once and for all. Jesus went once and for all into the heavenly tabernacle with his own blood. He was the priest and the lamb. And so he offered himself and he brought his own blood to the tabernacle, and the veil is torn now. So we are now, the cherubim no longer keep us out of the presence of God and no longer keep the presence of God out of us. We are now, the presence of God can dwell in us and does by the filling of the Spirit. You all right? How you doing? I know this is like major foundational kind of truth about us, but these images God has given because this is the way people are conceptualizing things. You know, it's like, well, couldn't have God just have written down and said, here it is, just read it and weep? Like, that's it. Just, do this and live. That's, God has said that. Do this and live in some way. Do this and live. But he's giving them something, it's like he's given, it's like why he gives us music. It's like God understands that we appreciate it. And there's like emotion and there's feeling and there's part of us that God gives us freely to enjoy. Sanctuaries, fellowships, all these things are a part of our design, and God gives it to us. God gave the tabernacle to set up a place, to give them a visible kind of conception of His presence, just a small amount. Like Moses asked God to show him His glory, and Moses could only see like a small part of His afterglow, just a little bit of His glory. That was enough. If he had seen all of His glory, he would have just been overwhelmed by it. But God put him in the cleft of the rock, let him see just a little bit of His glory. And now, because of the sacrifice of Christ, all of His glory is available for us to enjoy. Okay. Now, the purpose of the tabernacle here, I said this a little bit. It was the identification of the presence of God for Israel. It was illustration of God's salvation for the world. It was an incarnation of the person of Christ, of the person of God for His people. And it prefigured, it showed, gave them an idea of the pattern of God in heaven. So this tabernacle was just a representation of how we would enjoy the presence of God, how we would recognize the presence of God, just showing this. So it was an identification of the presence of God. When Moses finished the work, the presence of God came down, the cloud was there. No one could enter in because God was there. Moses did everything according to the design of God, and God's presence came in. When Solomon completed the permanent structure in Israel in 1 Kings, when that was completed, again, we see this same kind of testimony. It was the presence of God came in and everyone had to fall on their faces. No one could come in. The presence of God was so strong that no man could do anything but worship on his face before Him. So this, you can see the scriptures there. Hebrews 9, go to the New Testament. Hebrews is, if you want to get a really good explanation, Hebrews is an apologetic to Hebrew people about what Christ did as it relates to Leviticus, Exodus, Numbers, these pictures here. And it says here, where is it? 9. Let's see if I got the scripture right. It was symbolic for the present time in which both gifts and sacrifices are offered, which cannot make him who performed the service perfect in regard to the conscience, concerned only with foods and drinks and various washings and fleshly ordinances opposed until the time of Reformation. But Christ came as a high priest of the good things to come, and with a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation. So it's an illustration of the perfect tabernacle that's in heaven. All right, next thing. All right, so we've come to sort of, like, this is the way the book of Exodus ends, with this structure being built, it being finished and filled with the presence of God. And so you can see these are some of the highlights that go through all of this. So we have Moses at the burning bush. We have the plagues and the Passover. We have the Red Sea open and closing. We have the giving of the law, the disobedience, the golden calf, and then the tabernacle finished and filled with the presence of God. And after this, God is going to give some instructions here. The cloud, verse 34, Exodus 40:34 says, the cloud covered the tabernacle of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle, and Moses was not able to enter the tabernacle of meeting because the cloud rested above it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And so now this became the demonstration of God's presence. So I'm going to take this people, and I'm going to lead them through to their promised land, and they're going to see this happen again and again. Here's the next instruction. He says, whenever the cloud was taken up from above the tabernacle, the people of the children of Israel would go onward in all their journeys. But if the cloud was not taken up, they did not journey till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of the Lord was above the tabernacle by day, and the fire was over it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeys. So, God is trying to show this group of, couple million people, this group of people, he's trying to give them, what is it? What is he trying to give them? He's trying to give them a concept of who he is and just how much he is for them. It's like, look at where I brought you to, and now you have this. Now you have this. This is right in the center of your life. Let me put this in the middle of you. And when you're ready to move, my presence will show you where to go. And this is the kind of nation you are supposed to be. This is what you're going to be in the world. And this is your mission. This is your privilege. This is your mission. And God is, it's remarkable to me that a people could see this happen and still murmur and complain. But we see that this happens. They're stiff-necked. They are stubborn people. And they see this demonstration, they recognize it, they enjoy it for a brief period of time, and then they fall back into their own patterns of thinking about themselves. You had a question?
Is there any indication from any writings as to if they ever stayed in one place for a decent amount of time, or were they constantly on the move?
Well, it says if you go through towards the end of, where is it? I think it's at the beginning of Deuteronomy. Moses gives a record of how they went, but it doesn't give they were here for 9 months, and then they were here for 6 months. It doesn't say how long. It just says that they sort of, if you look at the map you could see that it should have only taken them 11 days to get to the promised land. Really, if they just kept marching on, should have only taken them 11 days. But when they got there, they sent the spies in. That's the next part, Numbers. Leviticus and then Numbers. When they get there, they send the spies in, and then they don't go in, and then they wander in a circular pattern around this area. And, they wander there for 40 years. And I probably, probably God let them stay there for a while, and just when they got familiar, the cloud went up, and probably everyone, oh, cloud's up, time to go, and then maybe one day, cloud's up again, you could just see the kind of people murmuring, maybe it was like a week, and he's making us move again, and it's not you're talking large groups of people, and it's not it's not an easy. It was not I don't think it was an easy existence, but God is trying to show them how He would be with them. All right, now Leviticus is the next book of the Bible. We have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus now, and this is a handbook for holiness, really. And God sets apart His people. He's going to give. This is like it's it can be very like. There's a lot of imagery here that is helpful to us about it. And it says this 56 times in this book, it says, the Lord spoke to Moses. Excuse me. And again, this phrase comes, all on the altar. Like these sacrifices, you put it all on the altar. These things, very specific kind of instructions on how this priesthood was supposed to behave in that little area around there, and what kind of things the priests are basically given their handbook for living before the nation of Israel, and how to handle certain issues that are going to come up in their lives. And these things, again, there isn't like a documented evidence of like some of these things, like why God said to do it, like the certain dietary restrictions. Why can't you eat shellfish? That would like kill me. I mean, because like I don't really like fish with scales on it. Maybe smoked salmon, but I love shrimp, I love crabs, I love lobster, all that kind of stuff. I could eat that all the time, but I don't like, but the dietary restrictions is not like, it's just saying this is what I'm asking you to do, this is what I'm asking you to do, this is what I'm telling you to do. And these restrictions are just really God testing the people. How will you respond to this? How will you respond? It's a book about purification, and it's going to take several years for God, like we talked about at the beginning, it's going to take several years for God to get Egypt out of the people and get them, practicing things that are different from the way that Egypt practiced things. All right, so God sets apart His people. He's going to give them this framework for living and sacrificing in their temple, their tabernacle, their purification. Now, this purification, these ritual baths, these kind of things saved the nation during the Black Plague. And it's kind of interesting that because they took a bath every week, that kind of interesting. The Jewish people took a bath every week so that the sanctuary wouldn't smell. Kind of like God likes, that's probably where the phrase got, cleanliness is next to godliness. Like they had these ritual baths, and the fact that they would have ritual baths meant that fleas that carried the bubonic plague in the Middle Ages didn't really like to land on clean Jewish people. And it became and they thought that they were sorcerers. They thought that the plague was something the Jews had put on them. It was just their manner of living. And eventually this became one of the things that turned things aside. The legend has it that a young teenager read the Leviticus and said, it says if you wash, you can be clean. And then this became a way that the Black Plague became less of a problem to the cities of Europe. But anyway, so this delivered people, this verse is important, 19:6, Exodus 19. This delivered people were supposed to become a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. So if the Levites and the priests practice this and the people respond to the order that God has designed, then this world mission is going to progress powerfully. It's going to progress powerfully. God is going to be with these people. The people of the earth, as we're going to see in Joshua, the people of the earth are going to be panicked because of the power of God. And if the people live this way, then the rest of the world would draw near and draw close to this and realize the God of heaven is the God. So, all right, central teachings. All right? So these are central teachings. This breaks down into two sections. The holy God must be approached in a prescribed way. God sets the rules through the offerings of the priest. God's offerings of the priest. God's